Hello, welcome to our November Teacher Office Hours. Today we're going to take a few minutes to talk about research resources that are available for students and teachers here in Indiana. It is important to remember that there are a variety of resources available for students, and so today we're going to focus on what teachers can do to support students and that research process. I want to start off with a little bit of a reminder. When it comes to National History Day and Indiana projects, it's important that both students and teachers remember students need both primary and secondary sources to support their research. Projects need to have both, and they should have a variety within those sources. So today I'm going to talk about the different types of primary and secondary sources and just some tips and reminders of how students can access those and how they can add to a project to provide more of a variety of research when they're building out their research and when they're building out their projects. So I want to start with primary sources. They are a vital part of building a National History Day project. And there's a variety of places that they can be found. When students are starting that research process, it's really, really important to think about what resources students need and where can they find them, right? So primary sources are going to be a big part of that. And that's going to be looking for, they're going to have to go to places, maybe not physically, maybe online, but they need to find primary sources from the time and from the place that they are doing their project about. So students can look for primary sources in a variety of places. They can start at libraries and archives. The Indiana Historical Society is a library and archive specifically for Indiana history. So students who are doing an Indiana history-based project might want to consider going to a place like the Indiana Historical Society, or they can go to the State Museum or the library, the Indiana State Library, or there's a variety of resources. Students need to think about where they should go based on the topic that they choose, right? So they might go to historical societies. They also might go to museums. They could go and find personal items. Depending on if the student is doing a topic or a project that is more personal in nature or maybe is related to family or something like that, they might go there. They can also look at newspapers, newspaper articles from the time period that they are looking at. This is just a very short list, but it is hopefully just to provide a little bit of a reminder of where all the places students can go to find research and to find sources to help them support their projects. And it's important to remember that you need to think about where students should go based on the topic that they choose, right? You want to think about local and national level resources. This can help students find multiple perspectives, particularly if you're talking about a larger topic. But local resources can also help students really narrow it down and get the experience that somebody had in a very specific place at a very specific time, for example. So there's a lot of usefulness at looking at a variety of places to find primary sources and finding a variety that way. So sometimes primary sources will need to be accessed in the library or the archive or the museum, right? They need to go. But sometimes they can be available online as well. Looking through digital collections, looking through collection guides online, that can be helpful to help students find primary sources. Where can students find secondary sources? There's a lot of secondary sources, and a lot of times students access secondary sources on a regular basis or in their day-to-day life, right? So websites, online websites, watching documentaries, encyclopedias, biographies, or other books written about the time period, textbooks. A lot of times students might find a topic that they are interested in their textbook, and that's where they start, right? But it's important to remind students secondary sources help you better understand, but you need to build the argument and continue to support that with the primary source research. So most students I find are going to start with websites or some type of book, right? But where do they go from there? Where did the websites get the information? Where did the book get the information? That can be a really great way for students to find sources is by look at the bibliography in a book or look at where the website got its information. So I only have a short amount of time today, so I can't go, through every single detail of a research process, but I think it's important to remind students, and when you think about how you want to build that research process for your students, think about the process that you want them to go through, right? So I think it's also important to remember that each research process is going to be unique. unless, your students are going to be doing a variety of topics over covering maybe a variety of locations and time periods and people. So they're going to need different sources and places to find them. It's helpful to think about tailoring your guidance based on what the students need, right? Because one student might need a particular library and archive, the other student might not need that place because they don't have the information about that. So it's important to think about, checking in with your students. What do they need? Where can they find it? And helping them along the way. So sometimes students and secondary source research is helpful because it can help students get an overview and it can also help students narrow down topics, right? So a lot of times they'll start by reading secondary sources to gain that overview. It can also help students identify primary sources to look for because those secondary sources had to use primary source research or other research to support that and to create that secondary source so they can find it through there. It can be a great place to start and then that can build to the primary source research, right? Keeping track of the documents that students are looking at, keeping track of the primary sources that they've engaged with, using some type of document or spreadsheet. Those are all things that can be very helpful in that research process. So thinking about from the teacher perspective, what is going to be helpful for you? What's going to be helpful for your students? How can you best support them? Is it creating some type of document to help them track that research? Is it checking in with them to have individualized conversations about the research that they're doing? Really just depends on your students, your classroom, and how you want to run that. Um, but students are going to start that research process and it'll build over time. I just want to highlight the resources we have available to you as teachers to help your students with this research process. Um, the one that I really want to highlight is the NHDI Master Guide. We have a variety of resources within there to help you and your students with the research process. In that guide, you're going to find an overview of the research process itself. You're going to find primary and secondary source analysis activities, full kind of worksheets or activities to help. You're going to find library and archive information, including overviews of how to find information in archival collections, how to read a catalog, things like that. This is a really great place to start if a student has never done research before. It can help them through that process. So for digital resources, what we have available is that master guide. We also have a topic guide where students are going to see a variety of topics that provide an overview of that topic and then links to resources. This can also be helpful because it can show students the type of sources they should be looking for when starting that research process because we've linked sources that could help them get started so they can see what is helpful and what to look for when they do their own separate research, right? We have a whole section on our website about how to build an NHD project with information about that research portion. And then we also send out monthly information via our educator newsletter. I try to keep that up to date with NHDI resources and other research resources from our collection. So hopefully you can see the kind of resources we have and think about what other places might have as well. But that's just a very basic overview of research for National History Day. Obviously, every situation is unique. Students are going to look through a variety of things, but it can be really interesting and exciting because it allows students to explore something that they're really interested in. So if there's any way that we can help you in your research process or in your students' research process, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much.